In today's lecture, we are going to take up the third chapter of Rabindranath Tagore's My Reminiscences. This chapter is called Within and Without, right? And one of the things we're going to see in this chapter is that Tagore narrates several incidents related to his early life where there is a tension between um, the home where he lives and his desire to leave the home and see what lay outside it. So once again, we're going to look at a few excerpts, and in the first one that we are going to look at today, in fact, the first two excerpts or quotations that we are going to look at today from the third chapter, Within and Without, Tagore's notion of children being constantly looked after and the freedom of movement against constantly petted are two of the themes that we are going to talk about. And these are themes which are kind of fundamental to understanding uh, the entire autobiographical narratives, because these give perspective of what Tagore thinks about childhood, his ideas of child rearing, and from his own experience, he draws conclusions and lessons about how children should or should not be, petted or looked after. So the first quotation goes as follows: "The children of our household were entirely free from the fuss of being too much looked after. The fact is that, while the process of looking after may be an occasional treat for the guardians, to the children it is always an unmitigated nuisance." So I think it's quite obvious here. It's not very difficult to interpret. He's simply referring to the fact that for children, being looked after too much is not really a treat, right? To the children, he says, being looked after too much, right, being constantly petted, in other words, is an unmitigated nuisance. In the contrary, it may be an occasional treat for the guardians, for the people who are looking after, but for the children, it is not necessarily pleasant, right? So this is one of the important, lessons that he has drawn on looking back at his own childhood. Let's now look at the second one. This one goes as follows: "To save themselves trouble, they had almost suppressed our right to free movement. But the freedom of not being petted made up even for the harshness of this bondage. For our minds were left clear of the toils of constant coddling, pampering, and dressing up." Once again, this is related to the previous quotation, with a little bit of addition that um, not being constantly petted is actually an advantageous thing for the children, right? Just have a look at the second sentence here. "But the freedom of not being petted made up even for the harshness of this bondage," right? And by this bondage, he is referring to the fact that the servants of his house, who were in charge of the children, of looking after the children, so these servants, they kind of suppress the right of the children for free movement. They were not able to go wherever they want, in that sense. Do not imagine that the children were kept in some cell by the servants. That was not the case. Rather, the case was more like they weren't allowed to go into certain places of the house, and they were certainly not allowed to leave the house, as you will, as it becomes clearer in this chapter. But then Tagore says that even though we were limited, our movements were limited, still our minds were left clear of the toils of constant coddling, pampering, and dressing up. He says these are things we did not have to worry about. Therefore, the fact that our freedom of movement was restricted is acceptable, right? So he said one made up for the other. Now, the presence of or rather the absence of coddling, pampering, and dressing up made up for the presence of restricted movement, right? So, um, in other words, if you are to go and break this down further, it essentially means that he, as an individual, of course, and he speaks about general children more generally, that children do not necessarily enjoy being pampered, right? It is very often the parents or the guardians who imagine that the children might want to be pampered, but Tagore says in reality that is not the case. Children don't always want to be pampered, and from his own experience he says that even though his freedom of movement was restricted, it was still acceptable to him, and perhaps the children around him, because they did not have to worry about constantly being pampered or dressed up or coddled, right? So he's talking about a balance here. Let's now look at the next quotation, where we learn about Tagore's distance from his elders during his childhood. Quote goes as follows: "Our elders were in every way at a great distance from us, in their dress and food, living and doing, conversation and amusement. We caught glimpses of these, but they were beyond our reach. Elders have become cheap to modern children. They are too readily accessible, and so are all objects of desire. Nothing ever came so easily to us." Okay, so here, as you can surely see, we get two things out of the paragraph that I have read to you. One is, of course, the statement of fact that Tagore had a considerable amount of distance from his elders during his childhood, and that is also evident from the two previous quotations. We know that his parents weren't always around him to dress him up, to coddle him, or to pamper him. That becomes even clearer when he says that they were at a great distance and they caught glimpses of what their guardians or parents were doing, their elders more generally were doing, but they were not always accessible, right? It's not like Tagore could just randomly run into the arms of his father whenever he entered the home, right? So it wasn't like that. And then he says that elders have become cheap to modern children. This is the second part of his observation. The first is, of course, his own experience. The second is an observation where he says that modern children, and when he says modern, remember that he's talking about sometime around, it's definitely in the 20th century. In fact, it's somewhere early in the 20th century when he writes this text. And he says that elders have become cheap to modern children and they're too easily or readily accessible, as are all the other objects of those children's desire. And finally he says, in comparison, this is the contrast he makes here, that nothing ever came so easily to us, right? That's what they all say, right? Okay, so let's now move into the next quotation, and here I'll just first read it out, and then we are going to talk about it. So this one goes as follows: "One of our servants was Shyam, a dark chubby boy with curly locks, hailing from the district of Khulna. He would put me into a selected spot and, tracing a chalk line all around, warn me with solemn face and uplifted finger of the perils of transgressing this ring. Whether the threatened danger was material or spiritual, I never fully understood, but a great fear used to possess me. I had read in the Ramayana of the tribulations of Sita for having left the ring drawn by Lakshman, so it was not possible for me to be skeptical of its potency." Right? So the reason I read this before giving you a kind of extract that we can draw from this paragraph is that not only is this an early experience of Tagore's childhood, not only is it an early memory, it is also an allusion or a reference to another text which has been instrumental in his life, particularly instrumental in forming this particular experience, right? So what happens here is that this servant, basically what happens here is the servant, he wants to obviously control the child, right? So that he does not run here and there, he does not vanish off to some region he shouldn't be going to. So this is why this servant, he draws a line around Tagore with a chalk. And Tagore says that I did not ever think to transgress, I did not ever think to cross the perimeters of the lines that were drawn around me, because in the Ramayana he had read that when Sita had done the same, that is when Sita had transgressed the line drawn by Lakshman, it did not result in a very pleasant situation. In fact, Sita went on to suffer a great deal before she was finally redeemed, right? But the point is, Tagore says that since I was familiar with this story, since I had read the Ramayana at this point, I was familiar with this story, and since I was familiar with this story, I was afraid that since there was a chalk line drawn around me, if I transgressed it, something terrible might happen to me too, very similar to Sita, right? So, if we reflect upon this paragraph for a moment, we see two things. One is Tagore's fears as a child. That is a very general way of reading this paragraph. But if we make a more literary, more specific reading, then we can derive that we are able to see an early interest and influence of literature in Tagore's in the formation of Tagore's intellectual formation. All right. The next quotation tells us about Tagore's habits of observation, which, as you know, are really very important in the context of a writer. It also tells us how his observations became very instrumental in his own writing, right? And once again, it is not very difficult to understand that someone like Tagore would be very perspicacious, right? Because he is easily, like I said, one of the greatest authors of all time. And as such, it is not surprising that he would be very observant. It is also not surprising that he would use his observations in his own writing. Nonetheless, let us look at the instance from his life story. So he says, from early morning, our neighbors would drop in one by one to have their bath, right? I knew the time for each one to arrive. I was familiar with the peculiarities of each one's toilet. When solitude thus reigned over the water, my sole attention would be drawn to the shadows under the banyan tree. Some of its aerial roots, creeping down along its trunk, had formed a dark complication of coils at its base. It seemed as if into this mysterious region the laws of the universe had not found entrance. As if some old world dreamland had escaped the divine vigilance and lingered on into the light of modern day. Whom I used to see there, and what those beings did, it is not possible to express in intelligible language. So in the first part, I have, as you can see, divided this slide into two sections, into two quotations. And the first one tells about Tagore's awareness of the bathing habits of all his neighbors, right? He said he used to observe that one by one his neighbors used to come and take a bath, and he was familiar with each one's peculiarities, as he mentions here. And in the second quotation that I have drawn here from the text, he talks about the great banyan tree which lay close to the water where all his neighbors took bath, right? And he says that once everyone had left, once all his neighbors were done with bathing, Tagore was left with nothing to look at but the banyan tree. And he did spend lots of time staring at the banyan tree, and it was as if that this banyan tree had a very strange and very mysterious allure, right? And in Tagore's own words, it seemed as if into this mysterious region, he's obviously talking about the dark complication of coils around the base of the banyan tree. It seemed as if into this mysterious region, the laws of the universe had not found entrance. As you can see, to him, the roots of this banyan tree are extremely mysterious, right? And that is why perhaps he is attracted to them. So finally he says, whom I used to see there, and what those beings did, it is not possible to express in intelligible language. He says, from staring at the banyan tree, or rather at the coils of the banyan tree, he saw strange visions perhaps, and it is not possible to express in human language what he experienced by looking, um, underneath the banyan tree. Nevertheless, what we need to draw from these quotations is that Tagore's habits of observation are very significant to his writing. If you read chapter 3 properly, you will notice that not only does he say that he is familiar with the peculiarities of each person's bathing habits, but he specifically mentions the habits of several of these people. This is in reference to the first quotation in this slide. In reference to the second quotation, that is the one related to the banyan tree, you will see that in the text, that is in My Reminiscences in chapter 3, not only does he write this paragraph, he also follows it up with a poem he had written about the banyan tree. So go ahead and read this, and make sure that you do make note of the fact that Tagore's habits of observations were significant enough for them to be a contribution to his own writing. Now let's look at the next quotation. We only have a few more and then we can be done with this chapter. So let me first read this quotation and then we'll talk about it. Going out of the house was forbidden to us. In fact, we had not even the freedom of all its parts. Right? Remember that the servants were responsible for restricting their freedom. Right? We perforce took our peeps at nature from behind the barriers. Beyond my reach, there was this limitless thing called the outside. Remember, the name of the chapter is Within and Without. So hopefully you are now able to see the relevance. Outside is a reference to without, and within is a reference to the inside of his home. So basically translates into The Home and the World, which is one of his later novels. So yes, we perforce took our peeps at nature from behind the barriers. Beyond our reach, there was this limitless thing called the outside, of which flashes and sounds and scents used momentarily to come and touch me through its interstices. It seemed to want to play with me through the bars with so many gestures, but it was free and I was bound. There was no way of meeting, so the attraction was all the stronger. The chalk line has been wiped away today, but the confining ring is still there. So as you can see, this paragraph, it explains or it tells us about Tagore's longing to find out what was outside his home, right? As you can see in the concluding lines, he says that the chalk line which his servant used to draw around him has been wiped away today. No one draws a chalk line around him anymore at the time of writing this book. But that confinement, the sense of confinement is still there, right? So even though the line has vanished, even though the border has vanished, the border still remains an absent presence. Try and understand the concept of absent presence here. Something which is not really in front of you, but nonetheless has some effect or the other. In literature, in many novels, in poetry, in epics, in all of literature, in fact, you are going to see a lot of this absent presence. A character who is not really present, but has a great deal of impact in the development of the plot, right? So that is something which happens here. But the important thing is, Tagore had a great desire to see what is outside, but he was not able to do so, and this is why he says the attraction was all the stronger. Okay, in a similar vein, let us look at yet another quotation. He says, I sometimes came up to the terrace in the middle of the day. By that time, everybody in the house would have finished their meal. There would be an interval in the business of the household. Over the inner apartments would rest the quiet of the midday siesta. The wet bathing clothes would be hanging over the parapets to dry. The crows would be picking at the leavings thrown on the refuse heap at the corner of the yard. In the solitude of that interval, the caged bird would, through the gaps in the parapet, commune bill to bill with the free bird. So as you can see here, he's talking about two birds And one bird is of course the free bird, the other is himself. He's talking about himself, right? So I do not think this paragraph requires much explanation. I do not have to break it down for you, because the obvious message once again is Tagore's longing to find out what was outside their home. And the terrace was of particular interest to him, right? And you will see the relevance of the terrace even more in the upcoming quotations, upcoming paragraphs. But do keep in mind that here there's an important metaphor. He talks about the birds that are free, and he also compares himself to a bird who has every desire to move about as freely as the free birds, but is unable to do so due to the restrictions that have been put on him, right? Okay, moving on into a longer quotation this time, right? And this too, along the same vein of Tagore's longing to find out what was outside his home. This one goes, I would stand and gaze. My glance first falls on the row of coconut trees on the further edge of our inner garden. Through these are seen the Singh's garden with its cluster of huts and tank, and on the edge of the tank, the dairy of our milkwoman, Tara. Still further on, mixed up with the treetops, the various shapes and different heights of the terraced roofs of Calcutta, flashing back the blazing whiteness of the midday sun, stretch right away into the greyish blue of the eastern horizon. And some of these far distant dwellings from which stand forth their roofed stairways leading up to the entrance look as if with uplifted finger and a wink they are hinting to me of the mysteries of their interiors. So as you can see from his terrace, which is particularly alluring to him, and terrace obviously became particularly alluring to a lot of people during the lockdowns, right? Terrace is where everyone went to. Nevertheless, terrace is also where Rabindranath Tagore went to when he was in a certain kind of lockdown, not like the ones we are all experiencing, not the ones we have experienced in the past, but you may it is certainly a kind of restriction that was put upon him with the chalk and everything. You already know that. But the point is, he went to the terrace, and from the terrace, he was able to see the outside world. He was able to see other houses. He was able to see someone's garden. He was able to see someone's dairy. He was able to see treetops, and he was able to see many other houses or many other terraces of Calcutta. And he says that many of these far distant dwellings were kind of, calling him or hinting to him to reveal the mysteries of their interiors, right? Now he uses a metaphor, and try to remember this metaphor. Like the beggar at the palace door who imagines impossible treasures to be held in the strong rooms close to him, I can hardly tell of the wealth of play and freedom which these unknown dwellings seem to me crowded with. So he said that whenever he went to the terrace and looked at these houses far beyond his reach, far beyond the area which was accessible to him, right? It was as if these houses hinted to him to reveal their mysteries, right? And the metaphor that he uses here is that he felt like a beggar who stands at the palace door and imagines that at the treasury of the palace there are impossible treasures which he can't even imagine, right? So he basically imagines the unimaginable. Tagore does something very similar. By looking at those houses, he could hardly tell of the wealth of play and freedom with which those unknown dwellings seem crowded with. From the furthest depth, he says, of the full sky of burning sunshine overhead, the thin shrill cry of a kite reaches my ear, and from the lane adjoining Singh's garden comes up, past the houses silent in their noontime slumber, the sing-song of the bangle seller, chai churi chai, and my whole being would fly away from the workaday world. Once again, this is an experience which does not require breaking down, nothing too complicated here. But one thing of particular interest to me is the fact that by looking at these houses, Tagore felt as if these houses wanted to reveal their mysteries to him. So you can already see that even early on in his childhood, Tagore had inklings of becoming a writer, right? Because he was interested in the mysteries of areas that were not accessible to him. Also of interest to me here, and I think you should all make note of this, is the metaphor of the beggar who stands at the palace door, imagines impossible or unimaginable treasures in the treasury of the palace. Similarly, he says his experience while looking at these houses was also same, right? Just like the beggar uh, tried to imagine what treasures may lay beyond the doors that are close to him. Tagore too imagined what mysteries or what play or freedom lay in those houses that he cannot explore.